Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 4th, 2021, the Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Colorado, Ms. Boebert, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past Friday, Biden CDC, formerly known as the Center for Disease Control, but oftenly referred to now as the Center for Democrat Control, announced that it would be ending Title 42. At a time when liberal mayors across our country are extending mask mandates on our children in schools, and the American public is still being forced to mask up on airplanes, the Biden regime has decided that protecting the American people from diseases, including but not limited to COVID, is not a priority if it comes at the expense of their amnesty and open borders agenda. Now, it is no coincidence that the Biden regime has decided to drop Title 42, a policy that has been used to prevent communicable diseases from spreading into the homeland via illegal aliens entering our southern border. In fact, more than 2 million illegal aliens have been apprehended at our southern border since Joe Biden took office. And Border Patrol agents estimate another 70% of these illegal immigrants have not been apprehended. They call them gotaways. So in fact, that means nearly 3.5 million illegal aliens have come across our border on Biden's watch. Now, Republicans and Democrats from both the House and Senate have condemned canceling Title 42. Some have called it dangerous, and others have called it frightening. I call it an attack on the safety and security of the American people. And it's been reported that by the time the midterms roll around in November of 2022, nearly 7 million illegal aliens will have crossed the southern border this year. That's larger than the populations of Denver, San Francisco, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Boston, Seattle, Miami, Las Vegas, New Orleans, Portland, Tampa, and Detroit combined. Can you imagine? We have a product here that's working. We have a policy that is working to deter some people away from the border. But we're going to take just whatever sliver we have that is keeping people out of our country illegally and do away with it. Maybe it's to overrun our system. Maybe it's to create chaos, 8 to 10 years of backlogs, so then the American people have to accept amnesty. I'm not sure exactly what the plan is, but it certainly is intentional. And that's what members of the House Freedom Caucus are here to discuss tonight. I have with me members from the House Freedom Caucus who are going to address what's been going on at the southern border. We have been to the southern border multiple times to see firsthand what is happening, the invasion that is taking place in our country. Unlike the border czar, who has failed to visit the most dangerous parts of our southern border. I think she made a trip to El Paso. And then, of course, the commander-in-chief, who is in command of nothing, he hasn't been there at all. But I would like to recognize the former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, my good friend, Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona.
I thank you. Thank the gentlelady for recognizing me. I would like to help set the stage here just for a moment. Imagine, if you will, 100,000 people entering the country illegally and stopped on our border just in the first 2 weeks of March this year. But because of Title 42, which allows the Border Patrol agents to immediately turn people away because of communicable diseases, that's the term used in Title 42, they sent 50,000 of them back away. But you don't have to imagine it, because that's true. That's exactly what happened. And if you extrapolate that out, because you can, just looking at from January, February, March of this year, they turned away over 250,000 people under Title 42. Now, when Title 42 goes away on May 23rd, because that's exactly what this administration wants, you will double the amount of people who are coming in through through the apprehension route. So that means we had another record month in March. Those numbers just out. That means that you're going to be sitting on about 300,000 to 400,000 apprehensions that you're going to be releasing right into the United States of America. And what does that do? Everybody in here knows this, because you've been down to the border. I've been down to the border with you. The cartels are in it to make money. And as they see this opening up, more and more people getting freed into the United States, caught and released, what they will do, and what they're already doing, by the way, is they will advertise. The NGOs that we help fund, that the United Nations funds, will advertise. It will be chaos. Chaos on the border, and my prediction is somewhere around 400,000 to 500,000 people a month coming in. But it actually could be more. A lot of people are talking about the ceiling now being 18,000 people a day when that goes away. I don't think it's going to be 18,000. I think it'll exceed 20,000. If it exceeds 20,000, that's 600,000 a month coming in. That's bigger than the city of Mesa in Arizona, which is Arizona's second largest city. And you know what that means? The last half of this year, the last half of the year alone, you're going to be sitting at, as you said, 4.5 to 5 million people brought into this country illegally. And that's not counting the getaways. And the getaways last year were at least 800,000. It's enormous. It's dangerous. It's inhumane. I haven't even touched on the inhumanity of it. We're just talking up here. We're not getting granular. We're just talking about the overrunning of America, our culture and our sovereignty. We won't have much of a nation after this is done. And you say to yourself, is this incompetence? The answer is no. This is willful. This is willful. And this is what they want.
Mr. Biggs, do you believe that the cartel have been emboldened during Biden's first year as president of the United States?
Absolutely, 100%. And you know how we know they've been emboldened? Because it used to be they would have the coyotes take the people up and locate them in the U.S. They don't do that anymore. The coyotes take them up, they put them on the border and say, we don't have to go in with you.
Wow.
Go in. Go in with your cell phone. Oh, by the way, Biden administration says now they're going to give away a cell phone to every illegal alien crossing the border. Yes. But they'll just come across. I've seen it. You've all seen it. They're walking across. They're FaceTiming their friends back home. Yeah, I made it in. They're dressed nice. They're dressed clean. The cartels are emboldened, not just at the southern border any longer. This is spilling over into the country. And we're seeing violence along the border because of it. And you're seeing cartel membership all over. If there's drugs being distributed anywhere in the United States, you've got cartels there.
And what about these illegal aliens who are coming through with the help of the cartel? What do they owe the cartel for getting into the United States?
The average price right now is $4,000 to $7,000. Unless you're from China, and there's $35,000. Very few of these people have that to pay. Guess what happens? They either they can work it off by delivering illicit drugs, helping to smuggle human beings, including sex trafficking, or they come in, they get a job, and they are indentured servants. They're effectively slaves to the cartel, and they'll never work it off because the cartels are taskmasters at this. They know exactly how to keep these folks under their thumb.
Yeah, so Mr. Biggs, you also chair the Border Security Caucus, and you recently brought in Secretary Mayorkas. Thank you for bringing him here to the Hill so we could ask some questions. But now he was talking about Title 42 being a CDC issue, and that's not really his issue to enforce. That's not his policy to enforce. What is a policy that he could enforce that would effectively secure our border?
He could enforce the MPP, the migrant protocols. And what he could do is, that's the Remain in Mexico policy. Instead of enforcing that at 9 people a day, that's the number we heard earlier this week, 9 people a day, you could actually enforce it the way it was intended to be enforced, and that would be thousands a day because we have thousands of folks coming in. That would be another deterrent. That's just one of the things that he could do. He could actually go in and encourage us to fix the Flores law or the TVPRA laws. All of those things would be deterrents, but instead, he's opened it wide open. He's taken away any deterrent. Instead, he is basically encouraging people to come into this country illegally.
Thank you. Now, one final question for you here. You're a businessman. We may have 7 million undocumented workers in our country by November. What does that mean for our economy?
Well, first of all, the underground economy right now for people is my estimate is about 25 to 27 million illegal aliens in the country. You're going to bring in another 7 million, so you're going to have an underground economy. Those people who are not skilled laborers are going to have a tough time getting jobs. A lot of these folks are going to go on social welfare programs, even though they're not supposed to be allowed to. They will get on social welfare programs. We're already we're on the verge of stagflation right now. High inflation and a shrinking GDP. As that happens, and you bring in that many people undocumented, you're going to actually exacerbate both those problems, and we may see the likes of something we haven't seen, might even exceed what happened under Jimmy Carter, who was probably the most unfortunate and incompetent president in my lifetime.
So we have more members joining us here from the House Freedom Caucus to talk about Title 42. Thank you so much, Congressman Biggs, for your insight on this. I know that you work really hard in studying what's going on at the southern border. Now, Mr. Norman, my colleague from South Carolina, do you believe that this regime is responsible for signaling to poor and desperate people that now is the time to take this dangerous journey, to break our laws, to come into our country and live under the freedoms and protections our country provides, but not as a citizen?
Well, first of all, thank you for organizing this discussion to inform the American people what's going on. This president is willfully, as Andy has said, and directly causing this to happen to the American people. You're a business person. You run a restaurant. I'm in the development world. Who would let anybody come into your business or to your home, not know who they were, not know why they were there? It's insane what this administration is doing. By taking Title 42, as has been said, it prohibits, that's the only tool that President Trump had at his disposal and President Biden has, but he's doing away with it because that's what he's encouraging. And Lauren, think about this. How unfair is it to that law enforcement agency, that law enforcement official, stopping a car, not knowing who's in it, not knowing what his background is, having no information? How safe is that for that law enforcement officer? How unfair is it to the municipalities and the cities who are going to have to pay for the hospital care, for the schooling? How fair is that? Well, it's not. It's intentional, it's willful, and as people ask me all the time, why is he doing this? He is burning the house down before, I assume, the November elections, which the House will turn over, and hopefully we'll elect Freedom Caucus members who have got the steel and the spine to do something about it. That's the only, he sold out, not only to the citizens, he sold out to China and those that he's indebted to. And we're going to find more and more out about that as we move forward. I will.
Well, I'm so happy that the gentlelady from Colorado organized this effort tonight. We need to be speaking about it. And of course, I would call on our friends from this side of the aisle. It's interesting that we're standing on this side of the aisle. I mean, thank goodness somebody's willing to stand over here and defend the country, right? So it's going to be tonight. So far, it's me and Chip. I call on my Democrat colleagues to start answering some questions and start defending their country from this invasion. But if the gentleman doesn't know this, if you do a quick calculation, DHS, this isn't Congressman Perry, Congressman Boebert, Congressman Roy, any of us up here, this is DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, are bracing for 18,000 crossings a day, 18,000 people coming across the border illegally each day. Now, I don't know, each one of you, the size of your town for where you come from, but I suspect 18,000 in any town would make a pretty big dent unless you're talking about one of the major cities like Los Angeles or something like that. But even so, 18,000 a day. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, that's over 6.5 million people. If we keep that rate up, 6.5 million people in 1 year illegally coming to our country. Ralph, or Lauren, Representative Boebert, could your business sustain something like that?
Absolutely not. The city of Rifle just hit 10,000 for our population. So, I mean, 18,000 people a day. I mean, that right there exceeds the little city of Rifle, Colorado. But this is something that we absolutely cannot endure. So I'm glad that we have this time tonight to discuss this. Representative Good, you have been to the southern border. You've talked to Border Patrol agents. Can you tell me what you've seen, what you've heard from Border Patrol agents?
Yeah, I've been there 4 times in my first year, the first 14 months here in this Congress. Thank you, Congressman Boebert, and thank you, Congressman Perry. You know, February a year ago was the largest February in terms of illegal border crossings in the history of the country. We had 101,000 cross, some 3,000 a day in February a year ago. We exceeded that by 64% this most recent February. We went from 101,000 to 165,000. Now, it's so bad with what this president has allowed to happen in the last year. 165,000 in a month doesn't sound like a really bad month for this president. That's because, again, it was 101,000 last February, but it increased as the year went on to where it was some 200,000 a month later on into the year, as we know, and 2 million in the first year this president was in office. And then, as others have already pointed out, with him rescinding Title 42, I guess he was afraid, well, that's a policy, a law that might help repel some illegals back across the border, might allow us to return some if we actually would enforce the law. So we're rescinding Title 42, which has already been said will take it from 7,000 to 2.5 times as large. 18,000 a day is the average, 500,000 in the first 30 days. This president is on pace for some 10 to 15 million illegal entries into our country in his first and hopefully only term. I was in a budget hearing today with you, Congressman Boebert, where we had Secretary Becerra there, the HHS secretary, which, as you know, has been called in. HHS has been called in not to help stop the border crossings, but to help facilitate those. Right. And I asked him today, I said, who do you think should be let across our border, or who should be prevented from going across our border? Are there any restraints you would put upon anyone that wants to come across our border? So do you think everyone should be able to come across illegally? And he said, well, quote, we're talking about violating the law. You're saying it's illegal. Why would we permit anyone to violate the law? Our president is violating the highest law of the land, the Constitution that we all, and he swore to uphold. Article 4, Section 4 says the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government and shall protect them against invasion. As we look to next year, I want to go on record and say, some of you are on articles of impeachment with me. Lauren, Congressman Boebert, you've drafted those. How do we declare this the public health emergency that it is, the national security crisis that it is, the health crisis that it is, the social services crisis that it is, the education crisis that it is, and the unlawful process that it is, and not hold this president responsible when we have the House majority, Lord willing, a year from now? How can we not impeach this president?
I agree with you. That absolutely needs to be brought up in the next Congress. Now, these appointed secretaries, they really have turned our Border Patrol agents into travel agents. They're being shipped all throughout our country, these illegal immigrants, and every state is now a border state. You're from Virginia. We have Ralph Norman here from South Carolina. I'm from Colorado. But someone who has a front seat view here, the gentleman from Texas, Congressman Chip Roy, this has been a really hot topic for you, and rightfully so. Republicans and Democrats from both houses of Congress have said that they don't support ending Title 42, and yet no legislation or action has been taken to reinstate it. What are your thoughts on that?
I thank the gentlelady from Colorado. I thank all my colleagues here from the House Freedom Caucus joining here on the floor. Thank my friend from Virginia who joined me down in Del Rio in Texas just a month ago, where we saw firsthand what is actually happening in real time on the border, something that we know. And unfortunately, my colleagues on this side of the aisle refuse to acknowledge and refuse to do anything about. Now, as you all know, one of our Freedom Caucus colleagues, Yvette Harrell from New Mexico, filed 14 months ago a piece of legislation to require that Title 42 be enforced at our border. And for those listening at home, Title 42 is our power as a country to stop communicable diseases and people with communicable diseases from coming across our border. And it is an important tool that President Trump and his administration put in place in the last year of his administration to ensure that we stop the flow of people across the border and from inundating and overwhelming Border Patrol. We knew this was coming. Let's say 14 months ago, we knew this was coming. A year ago, we came together. I filed a discharge petition as part of this team to say that we can force a vote on the floor of the House while the Speaker of the House refuses to bring to a vote a measure to enforce Title 42. So everybody listening at home, the Speaker of the House has control of the floor, refuses to bring forward a vote on Title 42 to require enforcement at the border, so we're trying to change that. We've got almost every single Republican, I think save one, who has filed that, 210 signatures. We need 218. Where are my colleagues on the other side of the aisle?
Right.
From the border states, even just the border states.
We have zero Democrats on that Title 42 discharge petition. Now, as the gentlelady from Colorado noted, there are at least 4 noteworthy United States senators who are Democrats who have said we should not end Title 42. Mr. Tester, Mr. Manchin, Ms. Sinema, Mr. Kelly. Those 4 members, those senators have said we should not end Title 42. Now, I'll wrap and pass to someone else just to say this. How many dead migrants is enough? How many dead Americans from fentanyl poisonings is enough? How much money in the pockets of dangerous cartels is enough? How many bullets need to fly at the border? How many homes need to be destroyed? How many cars need to be wrecked? How many DPS agents need to be killed or endangered? How many people need to be harmed before this administration will do its job? How many criminals need to be let off into the United States and not prosecuted under ICE? When are we going to change this and actually secure our country? That's my question for Secretary Mayorkas.
Congressman Tiffany, we talk about this issue regularly in our meetings with the House Freedom Caucus. And one question that comes up regularly is, where is Kamala Harris? Where is the border czar in this? Have you heard of any plans for her to visit the southern border?
Kamala who?
Yeah.
In all seriousness, it's unfortunate that Vice President Harris has not fulfilled her mission to be the border czar. It's awful. But did you all see the news today in regards to the free phones that the White House press secretary talked about today? Free phones for migrants. So think about it. I was down in Panama almost a year ago, went to the Darien Gap. Who did I see? IOM, the International Organization for Migration. Where do they get their money? They get a lot of their money from the United Nations. Who puts the most money into the United Nations? Yes, Americans do. Back home on the farm, what we used to refer to this as, my colleague from Texas just said, how many? How many? I would say to you also, how much? We used to refer to it as eating your seed corn. So Americans pay an international organization to send debit cards for these people to make themselves up the Panama pipeline all the way to the southern border. Then you pay for a bus ride to get them to the airport. Then you pay for an airline ride, Philadelphia, Baltimore, wherever. They're going around the country. Then you pay for the education, the free education they're going to get. You pay for the health care. That's what you Americans are paying for every single day for over 2 million people. And it is about to get worse. And to highlight how it's going to get worse and how obtuse this side of the aisle is, we're sitting in judiciary today, creating another loophole in the Virgin Islands. There's another loophole that's being created for visa waiver privileges, something that we saw in these Mariana Islands that was created about a decade ago under the Obama administration, where they allowed parole for people to be able to come in. Chinese nationals, there was like maybe 8 births that were being done on those islands prior to this change that was quietly made in the law. It accelerated to there was like 600 births of Chinese nationals that happened in the Mariana Islands as a result of that loophole. And if you want to see the reporting on it, the Wall Street Journal did an excellent job. And it was our one of our intelligence agencies in 2017 that really dug into this. And yes, here's this huge loophole, and they want to now create it in the Virgin Islands. That's what we're voting on right tonight in the Judiciary Committee. They want to create another loophole, and they're like, oh, it'll only be a few people. You, the American people, do you believe that?
I appreciate my fellow border stater being down here. You hold those Mounties back up there, okay? You just keep them at bay.
Every state is a border state, including my state of Wisconsin.
Tom,
Amen.
can I add something to that, what you just said? It's not just the phones. What about the gas cards that's in this latest, the budget that the president had? What about that? And just to put some context to this, Texas, I think, I think you got about 15 to 20 million people. South Carolina has 5.3. That's the number that's going to be coming into this country in the next 4 months if the pace continues. It's a travesty. It's something that Americans, we have got to be aware of and stop. God help us all if they do exactly what you said. And to fund all of this, America's at the breaking point.
So if I may extend my point a little bit, think about it. Tonight, we're debating in the Judiciary Committee creating another loophole. It shows how unserious they are, how they do not have the interests of the American people at hand. They want to create another loophole. And this one's in the Virgin Islands, not in the South Pacific. People are going to be able to be funneled in here by the thousands as a result of that loophole. Just another way to bring people into this country to compete against hardworking Americans who have to not only try to make their way up the scale, the economic ladder here in America, but now, with inflation, they have to fight that too.
Mr. Chairman, we're wrapping up here. 30 seconds. Final thoughts?
Well, final thoughts is that there are Democrats that are decrying this. We could do something about it, and they can do something about it right here in this House. They can walk right down into the well and sign this discharge petition. We don't need all, and we need 8 of them. Bring the bill up. You don't believe that we ought to continue to try and secure our border with Title 42? Vote against it. But let us have a vote. We're just asking for a vote. Let's see what the vote count is. And then the American people will know who stands with them and who stands for a wide open border, because that's what we're going to have.
Sounds
so
like
think
a just
about
plan.
That. To the gentlelady from Colorado, we certainly appreciate you putting this together for us and provide the opportunity to come and talk on behalf of our constituents that are very concerned about this.
And Mr. Chairman,
you,
could lead the way. You could lead the way.
Congressman Roy?
I would only add that I've seen some reports that there's a number of Democrats in the Senate joining with Republicans in the Senate to try to do something about this. I hope that's true. But my little warning to that is I keep hearing words about, well, let's keep Title 42 in place until we see a plan. All right, I don't want one of these plans full of words, okay? I want the border secure. I want Title 42 enforced. And that ought to be the metric that we're gauging everything by.
Solution simple. Complete the wall, end catch and release, reinstate remain in Mexico and Title 42, require E-Verify, take amnesty off the table. Speaker Mervan, we'd love to have you on that petition.
Sign the petition. Have the courage to call your congressman. And folks, it's time, as Winston Churchill said, it'll be a time when doing your best isn't good enough. We got to do what's required to close this border.
Thank you all, my colleagues from the House Freedom Caucus, for joining me here on the House floor tonight to discuss this issue. And I would encourage all members of Congress, both bodies in the House and Senate, to talk to a Border Patrol agent. Ask them about the policies that they need to secure our southern border. I guarantee you they won't be telling you they need funding or personnel or even infrastructure. They just need the policy to do their job so they could go home feeling like they've accomplished something and protected American citizens. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Pursuant to